Hi everyone, Carter Krishnaiyer here from the Pavilion. USA don't get the job done in the chase against Pakistan. A decent performance. Feels like the US played some very good cricket today, but we're never really in control of the match, with maybe the possible exception of those first few overs of our innings during the power play when the runs were flowing and we were getting to some of Pakistan's fast bowlers. So let's review the match, right? This was a much anticipated match in terms of what happened last time in the last World Cup, where the US beat Pakistan in that super over and rallied and had a target to chase that they chased down and got to and were able to get to a super over. This was the most anticipated rematch from the last World Cup in the group stages of this World Cup. And so Pakistan ultimately secures a 32-run victory in Colombo, and that puts the US really on the brink of elimination from making the eights. But I think that there's a lot to play for in these last two matches as we try and continue to establish ourselves as a formidable cricketing nation. And we're going to play the Netherlands and Namibia in the final two matches. So certainly two fixtures that the US could win. Let's talk about Farhan. Just the US couldn't get his wicket for the longest time. He goes for a half century. He goes for 73 actually on 41 balls. Babar, who is always tricky. He was always good in the field also, and we saw that in our innings. Went for 46. So it was that middle of that order, especially after the power play had gone pretty well for Pakistan. Now there was a fight back in the death overs. Actually, Skadley Van Schalwick, who had played brilliantly against India and was part of the reason that match was in the balance for most of the time, got 4 more wickets today. So now he leads the World Cup in wickets taken with 8. His spell triggered his last 2 overs, and Netravalkar's last kind of effective over triggered a collapse where Pakistan, who was on track with their run rate, and which is the way things were playing out to get to 210, maybe even 220, just post this daunting, untouchable number, were ended on 190 on 9. So 9 wickets for the US, 190 runs, which is still a really daunting target, but it would have been impossible if they got to 210 or 220. And we saw the US almost chase down a higher target in Navi Mumbai in a warm-up match a week ago against New Zealand. And New Zealand, who started this tournament brilliantly. So Van Schalwick was very good. And then the top of the order for the US, House kept his wicket a little longer this time, still only went for 13 runs. Cheyenne almost got to a half century as number 2 in that order, and did not lose his wicket for a while. Shubham went for a half century, but again was playing on one leg, just like in our innings against India. He injured it bowling against India. Remember when he replaced Ali Khan, who did not play today, who did not bowl. That hurt the US, not having Ali Khan. But I don't think it cost the US the match today. I think him getting hurt may have cost the US the match against India, and we're forever going to think about that. But I do think very effective in his batting, Shubham. Although Monak, at one point, didn't go for a duck today, but only generated a few runs, was annoyed that Shubham, you could tell, like demonstrably was not willing to kind of run things out. Maybe would have picked up a couple extra runs that way, but you never know, because Shubham stayed on strike because he couldn't run out things that could have been singles, end up as dot balls. Stays on strike, and he gets a number of boundaries, and again a half century. So really, the takeaway from the match that I want to talk about is Pakistan's spin bowlers, because at the end of the power play, it felt like the US had enough to get close to that target, if not win the match. After the first 6 overs, 50 runs. Pakistan had bowled a few with pace bowlers, with fast bowlers. with pacers and fast bowlers, and those were overs where the U.S. ultimately did very well, particularly Cheyenne, who was born in Pakistan, by the way. So I mean, he understands the Pakistani pace attack, which was always the trademark of Pakistani bowling. But ironically, Colombo is where some of the best spin bowlers in cricket history have called home, Sri Lanka. And Pakistan introduced spin. They kind of introduced it in the power play, but then after the sixth over, introduced it. And boy, oh boy, it was impressive. The next 3 overs, I think Pakistan gave up 8 or 9 runs total. And that just slowed the flow of runs, broke up the partnership, right? A couple of the partnerships that were kind of trying to develop for the U.S. took a couple of wickets in that process, and that was that. The spin was impressive. Similar to India's spinners, right? Limiting the runs against the U.S., but I think the big difference is you don't necessarily expect it from Pakistan. And I want to talk about Usman Tariq, who we're headlining in this. Usman Tariq, I'd never seen him bowl before. Never seen this player before. Now, apparently he played in the Caribbean Premier League, so I should have seen him. Maybe I'm just not remembering. But he reminded me of a baseball pitcher from when I grew up here in the States. Ken Tekulve is a guy from the Pittsburgh Pirates I remember really well. Dan Quisenberry. I mean, there were a few of them that had these kind of very unorthodox deliveries, but, it throws you off. Reminded me of that. It was kind of a baseball-style delivery. That's what I'm calling it. That's what we're headlining it. And the U.S. batters were spooked by it. Now, I thought they had never seen this guy before. Now that I've realized he's played in the Caribbean Premier League, I know earlier I taped a video where I said they clearly had never seen this before. A few of them probably had seen him. Most of them had not. But it took a couple of overs of him bowling for us to figure him out. And he bowled 4 overs. That made a big difference in this match, because that kind of, again, if you're trying to figure out an unorthodox bowler and it throws you off your rhythm, then especially when you're chasing, it's difficult. So I think Pakistan set up their team brilliantly today. I do think they deserve to win the match. The U.S. didn't play poorly, but they deserve to win the match because I think they scouted the opponent. They've been beaten by the U.S. before, unlike India, who maybe took the U.S. somewhat lightly. And then they had the spinners ready for the U.S. U.S. was looking, I think, thinking they were going to face pace bowlers. They faced a few in the first pace and fast bowlers. They faced a few in the power play. Generated a lot of runs very early, which is not what we typically see from the U.S. And not losing wickets either. But then the middle was just tough. So Shibam post-match said, I want to thank the ICC for sending this to me. And I want to thank the ICC for all their help. I'm getting a lot of cooperation in the cricket world for doing this and this channel. And quite frankly, I wish I got as much cooperation with all the football, soccer stuff I do from governing bodies and stuff there. But that's conversation for another time. So Shubham said this: I think we are playing good cricket overall, and I would agree with that. We just have to be present, and it doesn't actually matter where we stand right now. Now, I disagree with that, but he has to say that. It's just playing other 2 games and beat our opponents with the big margin. Possible. I don't think it's likely. I like the way the Netherlands have played, which I'm going to get to in a minute. That's what we're looking forward to. And you're not worried about where we are standing. We just have to play good overall cricket. So that's kind of true. And I think the U.S. has not played poorly in either match. A couple of mental errors against India and the Ali Khan injury cost us. But I think we're there with a chance in the last 2 matches, and that's something to build from. I was not expecting to make the 8s of this tournament in the subcontinent, in these conditions, not ideal preparation, the problems with USA cricket, governance problems. But I thought, okay, if we can put up a show and build, because we're in the building phase. And I don't want to keep making reference to the sport I work in, which is soccer, football. But in that sport, the U.S. has had to gradually build. And then the U.S. stopped building and got really greedy at some point. It's commentary for another time. But a lot of this feels like the formative stages in that sport. And we can complete the process in cricket, which we never completed in soccer or football because of other issues. But so I feel good about where we are. So let's talk about the Dutch. That's our next opponent. And actually, our final opponent is Namibia. Netherlands secured their first points of the tournament with a 7-wicket victory over Namibia. It was really kind of composed, professional performance is how I would describe it. Namibia really struggled. They batted first, and Van Dijk, who we've talked about before, really good, good economy. De Lede, who was victimized by Pakistan batters, smart Pakistan batting, field alignments in that first match, and Pakistan finding creases, it seems. He batted pretty well. He bowled pretty well. And then he batted even more brilliantly, right? He had a half century. Match didn't really feel like it was in doubt. So the Dutch get their first 2 points of the tournament. New Zealand crushed the UAE, Oman, Italy, and Canada have looked. Those 4 sides have looked really poor. Now Italy, I thought, looked great in their prep, so maybe it was a one-off against Scotland. But there's kind of an established bottom tier. The U.S. is above that bottom tier despite not getting a result yet. Of course, the U.S. has also played India and Pakistan. So if the U.S. don't get results in the next 2 matches, we can put them kind of in that bottom tier of qualifiers. But New Zealand crushed UAE. Again, this is a side the U.S. were very unlucky not to beat in a warm-up match just 5 days ago. So it's they've really started this World Cup well, the way they beat Afghanistan. Tim Seifert, Finn Allen, both phenomenal half centuries, but actually nearly a century for Allen, for both. And this is the best opening partnership I'm going to say it. It's the best opening partnership today that I've maybe ever seen in a T20 international. I'm sure it's not a record. I'm sure there are matches I haven't seen, but I think this is the best opening partnership I've ever seen. And it was a devastating defeat for UAE. So tomorrow we've got South Africa, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, I like their spin attack, but South Africa looks so good against Canada. David Miller, like I said yesterday, doing David Miller things once you get to him in the order. Markham was very good leading the order. So I think South Africa probably win that. Australia plays Ireland. Australia is missing a lot of pieces. We've talked a lot about that to this point, but I think they beat Ireland. So I just want to talk for a few minutes before we close on tomorrow's big match. You talk about big rivalries. You talk about big history in this sport. England and the West Indies at the Wakende in Mumbai. It's interesting because I came to this tournament saying England were the side, even more than South Africa, that could challenge India and win this tournament. I'm thinking Pakistan may be able to challenge India now, by the way, based on what I've saw in the way they saw at the Netherlands, and then today against a U.S. team that did not play badly, but Pakistan was never not in control. England's first match against Nepal, they got through, but it was very alarming on multiple fronts, as we've talked about already. West Indies, I thought they may be shaky coming to the tournament. They looked so good. They looked very good. Romario Shepherd had a hat trick in the first hat trick of the tournament. Hetmeyer looked really good too with his half century, where he was basically getting a brace on every ball, more or less. If you even, I think it was 68 on 34 or something like that. I might be wrong about the actual numbers, but I think that it was about 2 for 1. England they weren't sharp, and Harry Brook has called for a sharper effort. The captain, the center of a lot of controversy lately. We'll see what happens with this very big change. Luke Wood is out for tomorrow. That's been confirmed. Jamie Overton will move in, so the seamer, the pretty effective seamer, out, but it looks like England may want more batting depth against the West Indies. I'm not sure about this change, honestly, but they've confirmed they're making the change. But we'll see if it works out. We will see tomorrow how Phil Salt does. And Jofra Archer had wasn't good bowling, but he made the ultimate sacrifice in the as I think I talked about the other day, in the batting phase, in the last over, to get Will Jacks back on strike to deliver the winning winning margin. So heady cricket from him, smart cricket from him, but he needs to bowl better. Adil Rashid, he's had matches like this before, but was really rocked against Nepal. Sam Curran had a great match. Without him, England don't win that. So we'll see how this plays out. But I think Salt and Giles Butler have to be a little more clinical. And then obviously when you get deeper in the order, you're going to depend on Brook and Curran and Jacks. Now for the West Indies, Romario Shepherd, Jason Holder, Matthew Ford, these are guys that also in the middle of the order can give England's bowlers all kinds of trouble. If you're England, you're going to want to on the Vakande track, get them to kind of pop up and get some wickets. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. For England, if they lose ultimately, I don't think it's fatal, but it would raise a lot of question mark. And I think this is the thing ultimately that we all know about England and the way the media there views these sorts of things. The way the match against Nepal has been covered, it felt like a loss. And I'm used to this from football, as I've said, football, soccer, that England can get 9 points in the group stage of the Euros or the World Cup, and ultimately, it's not good enough. The style's not good enough. Gareth Southgate, what's he doing? Right? So I think when you play the West Indies, you just want to beat them, right? I think that will be excused. But if they lose this match after the poor performance against Nepal, it's going to be pretty brutal for them going into the final two matches of the group stage. I still think England are a contender. You have to sometimes play your way into a tournament, which India also, there should be lots of questions about India after their performance against the U.S. In spite of the margin finally being 28 runs or whatever it was not. If you watch that match, and even the Indian commentators saying this, if you watch that match, it felt like for large portions of the match, the U.S. were on top. That's why final scorecards don't always tell the story. And of course, I will once again mention the U.S. suffered a couple of critical injuries during the flow of the match that also affected that. But we'll see. So we'll be back with you guys tomorrow.